Hi, my name is Martine Dowden, and today we're going to talk about tables. Tables historically have gotten a bad rap because we used to use them for layout out of not having a whole lot of choice, and because they're difficult to handle nicely on mobile. Today we're going to walk through how to create a table that works well on desktop and mobile without having to write the code twice or having to use any JavaScript. Some things we've done in the past include using word break in order to make sure that our content worked well. This table only has 3 columns, and it's already quite difficult to read. We can use ellipses in order to try to make that a little bit better. However, it's probably not going to work as your main strategy for making a table work well on mobile. With ellipses, what we've often done is added a title so that you can read the full content that is supposed to be in the cell. However, the problem with this approach is that 1, hover doesn't exist on mobile, so we would need an alternate or JavaScript strategy for mobile. And 2, it's not exactly discoverable, so short of the user hovering over it and accidentally figuring out how it works, or having seen this paradigm before and knowing to hover to see if there's a title, there's no easy way to know that this feature even exists. So let's look at a better solution. As a reminder, this is our end goal. First, we're going to start with a plain HTML table. We have standard HTML, just plain old TR, TDs, TH. We're going to add some basic styles, border collapse, and we're going to make sure the table takes the full width. So far, pretty standard stuff. It looks okay on desktop, but on mobile, it looks pretty bad. It definitely has some overflow issues. We have some left and right scroll. We're going to need to fix that. We're going to start mobile first and then address desktop. The first thing we're going to want to do is take the T-head, T-body, and the rows and give those a display block. Notice how cells and rows have specific roles attached to them. This is why we start with an HTML table. That way the roles are right there and semantic to the HTML. If we use divs, we would have to write aria to replace those roles, as divs don't have them, so that assistive technologies could understand our code. By starting with a standard HTML table, we prevent that problem and reduce the amount of code we therefore need to write. Next, because we're on mobile, we're going to get rid of that header for a little bit, but we're not actually going to get rid of it by using a display none. We're going to just shove it off the screen. That way screen readers still know that the head exists, it's still a standard table, but the headers are now off to the side, and from a visual standpoint, we're going to replace those a little bit later. So I'm going to use a position absolute and move it off somewhere off screen so that it can no longer be visible. We'll then take the header information and put it back into the cells in just a little bit. As you can see, we haven't changed much other than our header has disappeared. Next, we're going to take our cells, give them a display block, and give them some padding. We're now neatly stacked, and now we're going to add that header information back in. In the HTML, we're going to make a small edit. We're going to add a data header attribute to each of the cells, naming what header that cell belongs to. Then in the CSS, we can take that header information and inject it using before and content for it to show up before each of our cells so that visually we have that understanding of what that content represents. Without doing that, yes, the content is available, but it's very hard to tell what each of the individual lines of content means, especially if that content is going to wrap. We then pull that header information in the CSS using attribute, data header, and then we can add a colon. As you can see, the header information is now visible before every cell, so we know what information matches to what. We can now style our table a little bit more so that there's better differentiation between what is content, what is header information, where our rows start and stop. So let's start with the header information. We're going to give it some color, change the font weight, make it small caps, capitalize it, and make sure it's aligned to the left. Next, we're going to style our rows by giving them some borders. Each row is going to get a border bottom, and then we're going to add a border top to the first row so that we can make sure to nicely show where the table starts. Our last piece is going to be alternating the colors in our body by doing a TR nth of type even and giving that a background color, so every other row is going to have that background color of Alice blue. We now have a table that works quite well on mobile, but now we need to make sure it works well on desktop as well. If we expand our view to have more of a desktop size, we can see that it no longer looks like a table on desktop. To handle our desktop layout, we're going to use a media query. I'm going to use a min width of 600. Depending on your table and how many columns it have, the amount of data in it, etc., you may need to change that number. 600 will work well for this example, so that's what we're going to use. And in there, we're going to take all of those elements that we added blocks and changed our display type to, so table, T-head, T-body, TR, TH, and TD, and we're going to revert our styles. We're going to do a display revert. This, in this case, is going to take them back to the defaults from the browser, which is exactly what we want, and we're going to do the same thing for the position. Because as you may remember, we took that T-head and shoved it off to the side off the screen, and so we want to make sure that gets brought back to where it's supposed to be. So we're going to give the display and position properties the value revert in order to bring us back to our default styles. As you can see, our table now behaves like a table again. The last piece is going to be getting rid of the header information that is coming before every cell. It's no longer necessary because we brought the table header back to the screen. To get rid of the information, we're going to do TD before and just a content of empty string, and that will make that information go away. And so now we have a table that works well on desktop and on mobile with minimal amounts of code and no JavaScript. Thank you for watching. You can find the code on CodePen or on GitHub as a gist. Feel free to reach out to me on social media. My Twitter handle is Martine_Dowden, or check out my work at martine.dev. Have a great rest of your day.